But joining us right now to get more into the NFL draft on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline, he's the one and the only Emory Hunt, F-Ball Game Plan on Twitter. Also, check out his YouTube channel, Football Game Plan, for all your NFL, college football, and FCS analysis. It's a busy time of year, especially with the FCS schedule all over the spring. Emory, I hope you're getting some sleep. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fine, man. I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you jumping on. So let's start off at the very top here. Your initial reaction when the 49ers moved to 3, the Dolphins went to 6, and the Eagles went to 12, as you've had time to process it, is what?
Well, if you're San Francisco, it's a move you had to make, and you were aggressive in doing so. We saw how it played out last year. They've gotten average play from their quarterbacks, and when they got the Super Bowl, it was, due to one of the best defenses in the league and their ability to be functional on offense. And, we saw that not be the case last year. And usually it's the one thing that's missing from a team that is on the cusp is that quarterback that can help push them over the top. And I think they had to be aggressive in this class if they wanted to get one of the premier options.
When you think about those premier options you just mentioned, I think most people right now are assuming that Trevor Lawrence is going to go 1, Zach Wilson will go 2. I think people like me would say, okay, well, Justin Fields would be 3, but is there a possibility the 49ers look elsewhere at that 3 spot?
Well, it's always a possibility, and it all depends on how they view the guys. I view it Lawrence, Fields, Wilson, and Mac Jones as 4 and Lance at 5. But everybody has their differences as far as how they view the position. So yeah, they can go in one of many different directions with that pick. So you just hope that this is not a situation like we saw in 2017 with Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, and a team moves up and they take Trubisky out the deal. You want to make sure you hope for them, for their fans, they take one of the elite prospects, in my opinion, and help their franchise continue to move forward.
Now, you just said you have Mac Jones ahead of Trey Lance. I think that goes against some of the popular conventions. So dive into that. Why do you have Mac Jones where you do? Because I keep hearing all the time how much potential Trey Lance has, and now Mac Jones isn't as athletic as the other guys.
Well, they talk about potential and they talk about the upside, and I see that. And but people just talked about Dwayne Haskins only having 15 games as a starter at Ohio State, in which he broke records, both Big Ten and national records. And now, just 2 years later, you're all in on a guy with 15 starts coming from the FCS level where they didn't really pass the ball a lot. And in his one showcase game, he was kind of okay. Now you want that guy to go number 3 overall, and or some even saying number 2. So I just don't. I understand if you're Atlanta or a team like Detroit maybe, or some team that has a veteran in place that you can stash him for 2 years and allow him just to get reps here and there. I like how Green Bay did with Jordan Love, and that's why I compared Trey Lance's game to. I just don't. I think Mac Jones, because of where he played and how he played the position against the competition he played against, I would feel more comfortable pulling the trigger on him first, more so than Trey Lance, unless I have a situation where I can sit him behind one of these older veterans that are established, like how Green Bay is doing it with Jordan Love.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was mentioning earlier before you jumped on that, to me, I look at Atlanta as kind of like the big key mover in this draft right now, because you mentioned the veteran quarterback. Well, they could take Trey Lance and stash him behind Matt Ryan for a year or 2, or they could go out and get other pieces. So to me, I feel like number 4 is going to be the domino starter for this draft.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You want to have a situation where, you get a quarterback, because if you're Atlanta, you don't plan on picking as high, often. So if you have an opportunity to get a guy that can step right in for your quarterback, especially if you're a new coaching regime and you're going to be there for at least 2 to 4 years, or let's say 4 years minimum. So you have an opportunity to groom and develop to where he does hit the ground running in a year or 2. He knows your offense. He knows your scheme. You continue to get better around him. So, yeah, it makes sense for them to take someone like that they can slow walk into the starting position.
Emory Hunt joining us here on Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN at FBall Game Plan on Twitter. The YouTube channel is youtube.com/football game plan. Make sure you follow him for all your NFL, college football, and FCS analysis. Emory covers it all. Emory, Eagles are now go from 6 to 12. How does that change the players who you expect to be available for them to pick, and what positions that would be available at 12 make the most sense for the Eagles in your eyes?
Well, it wouldn't have changed for me because at 6 I had them taking a cornerback, whether it was Patrick Surtain or Caleb Farley. At 12, I would still have them taking a cornerback because you look at last season, more so than anything, every time you look up, they were getting beat deep down the field. They need to stockpile talent in the secondary with the league average formations being, 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receiver sets. You got to be able to match up. And so they have Darius Slade, but they have an opportunity to add another premier corner to where teams come in and try to put their number 2, let's say Dallas, for instance, and you have Slade on a guy like Amari Cooper. Well, now you can match up a guy in Patrick Surtain or Caleb Farley or whoever you deem the top corner may be, J.C. Horn. You can match that guy up on a C.D. Lamb or, Michael Gallup, and now you're in good position because now you have a Avonte Maddox who is a good mirror and match guy. You put him inside as a slot player, and now you're able to match up defensively in the passing game. So I would go corner. I know a lot of the fans are screaming for wide receiver, but that's all fine and dandy if you can't stop until you can't stop anybody. So I think corner would have been the play if I was the GM at 6 and also at 12.
Let's touch more on those cornerbacks because I feel like there's a lot of debate about those 3. Obviously, Farley didn't play last year. Surtain and Horn, those are 2 guys with NFL blood in their veins. How do you evaluate those corners? Because I know that from watching your evaluations, you are not evaluating them purely as just 1, 2, 3. You're looking at how they would play in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's the thing because you have certain preferences on how guys play. Some guys are slot corners, some guys are field corners, some guys are on the boundary, which means you really will lock them up on the team's number 1 receiver. So, I think Horn and Surtain are what you call field corners. They have the athleticism to play out there in space. Look at a guy like Asante Samuel. I think he could hold his own on either side. Asante Samuel Jr., he's outstanding. Caleb Farley, I think those are more boundary corners, more of your number 1 type corners. And slot corners, if you want to go inside, I think they had that taken care of already. But I like Elijah Molden, Lorenzo Burns out of Arizona, Avery Williams out of Boise State, who always finds football. So, there's options. So you could double up on a cornerback position in this draft class, and I think you could do just fine. That's how deep I believe the position is this year.
I'm glad you said that because I was putting out on Friday when the trade went down. I was like, look, if the Eagles walk out of this draft with both Patrick Surtain the second and Asante Samuel Jr. second round, I don't think anybody could complain because you're not just addressing need, you're getting guys who sooner than later are going to be able to get on the field and make a legitimate impact. And to me, that's what this team needs. This team was so horrible in the back tier and then the linebacker, cornerbacks on this defense. They need to address that position if they want to be legitimate anytime soon.
Yeah, you got to get better defensively, and a lot of times this year, this era in the NFL, you got to get better on the outside working in. So your cornerback play has to be tremendous. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself getting burned.
Emory Hunt joining us here on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Emory, I want to ask you about a guy who's been talked about a lot, obviously because the Eagles were at 6. He was mocked to some people at 6 overall, but he's a guy that's been debated a lot, and that's Kyle Pitts. Some people say he's a tight end. Some people say he's an offensive weapon. How do you evaluate Kyle Pitts' projections to the NFL?
I'd say he's a tight end. You don't want to – I know fantasy football and things like that kind of get people enamored with, people, being able to do anything and line up anywhere. But as you move up to a level, he's going to be going against NFL cornerbacks, so having him at tight end keeps you, in a good position from a matchup perspective. But yes, in certain situations, you can line him up outside and have him take advantage. But I like the player. I think he's tremendous. There's no downside to taking good players if that's the way they're going to go, because he's definitely one of the good players in this draft. And, you figure out the rest. But I think adding him just, wouldn't help out the secondary. So for me, it's just about trying to get better immediately in areas where you can get better. Because at one point in time, the Eagles fans, they were happy with Jalen Reagor. They were happy with, Dallas Goedert when they took him, and now they turned on all players. So if you try to appease the fan base, you're always going to do the wrong thing. But if you go about this the right way and just build your team with premier talents, you're going to be just fine. Now, he is a premier talent, but tight end, I don't know if I will go there, despite him being able to play multiple positions out there in the passing game. I would still go corner. But Pitts, to me, if you told me you got Pitts, I wouldn't be as upset if you told me you just went with a wide receiver.
I want to ask you about another guy who's a receiver who the Eagles might not get, but he's been talked about a lot, the Heisman Trophy winner, Devonta Smith. For me, and this is just an opinion that I have, I'm not saying that I'm right, but it concerns me that he's not been weighing in. He's not been interested in doing the physical evals. He claims he's 170, which, I guess I got to take his word for it. Those skinny legs really scare me, Emory, because he may be this great route runner. He may be this great talent, but I'm a little worried that some, over-eager safety is going to go take out his legs and, break him up a little bit.
Well, you would have thought that would have happened already, but, this guy has showed that, he's able to play at that side. That's the one thing he knows how to do is play at that side. So to me, he's a really good player. Size is not a skill, and, he's strong. He's very strong and physical, to be honest, at the catch point, running his routes. There's nothing that really shies him from going over the middle of the field. And, again, and we've seen bigger wide receivers stay hurt, and we've seen this dude never get hurt. So until you have evidence of him doing so, I just have to take his play at face value, as this guy can, handle his own at 170. And weight gain is, to be honest, the easiest thing to do. Not saying it's super easy to where he can just pack on 15 pounds, but I'm not worried about him gaining weight. More so if people can't lose weight is where you have some questions, but gaining weight, that's something that you're never going to be worried about coming from my perspective.
Now, of the two Bama receivers, do you have a preference of those two between Waddle or Smith, or do you feel that they are equal in terms of what their potential can be?
Well, both guys are excellent. They both grade out very high. And to me, it's all about what you want and where you need. I think it's funny because I think both guys can play any one of the three receiver positions. So it's all about preference. Both guys are fast. Both guys are playmakers. Both guys are outstanding.
Emory Hunt joining us here on Game Day on 97.3 ES, talking about the Eagles, the NFL draft, and more. We are just weeks away from the NFL draft. You want to make sure you're following them at F-Ball Game Plan on Twitter. The YouTube channel is youtube.com/Football Game Plan for more extensive analysis of what Emory's got going on. Emory, I want to also ask you about when it comes to next year. There's a perspective out there, I want to know your opinion on it, is that people are preparing the load up for next year because they feel like they will have a better opportunity to evaluate talent when a regular football season comes around in 2021. So they'll be more prepared in evaluation for 2022, which is why some people say the Eagles were smart and now walking away potentially 3 first-round picks next year because they can get more players, they have more time to evaluate than for this year. What are your thoughts on that theory or philosophy?
Well, you still got to make the picks. You can have a boatload of selections and make the wrong selections, and you hurt your team multiple times over. So having potentially 3 of the top 32 picks, that's great because that's 3 premier players that you can grab in one draft. That's just outstanding. That's why I'm always a fan of those that have 2 first-round picks. And again, it's all about making the right selections. We've seen this time and time again with teams that have multiple first-round picks. They hit on one and blow the other one, or they hit on both. If you're able to hit on both, in the Eagles' case, hit on potentially 3, that really sets your team up for success for the long term.
The other scenario that I brought up over the weekend was, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but, if everything goes well this year and they're like, hey, Jalen Hurts is our guy and everything works out, maybe the Eagles go into the draft and they take those picks and they try to move up and get a guy like Kevon Thibodeau, because to me, if you can get a freak pass rusher like him, that might help your team too.
Well, and also at the end of the day, who's going to be the premier player? We're saying Kevon Thibodeau right now, but who's to say next year some dude out of nowhere just blows up and ends up grading out better than Thibodeau, and or you could find a way, because you have 3 first-round picks, to get both. So you really have a whole lot of options at your disposal, because you have the ability now with 3 first-round picks, potentially 3 first-round picks, if Carson Wentz is able to stay healthy and play the full season for the Indianapolis Colts. So, yeah, Thibodeau is a great player. And if there's someone that pops up next year as well, that, man, is it Thibodeau or this other guy, and you have the situation that you could be in a scenario where you can get both, man, that's a great haul for any team.
Well, you know me, I love my defensive players because I'm a defensive guy, but that's just, my personal bias. You know what I mean?
I feel you. And again, you want to, again, 3 first-round picks to me sounds like 3 premier players, no matter, what position. And that should be the goal when you're taking players in the first round.
Emory, one more before I let you go, and I always appreciate you jumping on your insights. Jalen Hurts is projected right now to be the Eagles starter, and this is a question that you and I have talked about a little bit before, but now that you've had more time to evaluate the quarterbacks, kind of get a little bit deeper into who they are, taking out Fields and Lawrence, looking at the other 3, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and I just forgot his name. Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and why am I drawing a blank on the dark guys?
Wilson.
Zach Wilson, thank you. My goodness. I only saw his name on Twitter 2 million times this week. I thought I would have remembered his name. How does Jalen Hurts as a prospect stack up next to those 3 guys?
He's more along the lines of, Justin Fields. They're about the same type of guy. I have a slightly higher grade on Zach Wilson, but Jalen Hurts is right there, right behind him. And the reason why is both guys have, let's say, Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts. They have the same type of mental makeup. They have that assassin mentality, that that killer mentality that you want at the position, just like Deshaun Watson. Those guys, to me, are guys that don't get rattled. They don't get, frazzled by the situation. They're able to play through any type of adversity. And that is something that's a key trait to any quarterback. You want that type of player on your team. So we saw Justin Fields do it. We've seen Hurts do it at multiple schools and programs. We saw him do it last year in games with the Eagles. So if you have that trait, to me, you're already ahead of the game.
Follow him on Twitter, FBallGamePlan, YouTube.com/FootballGamePlan for all your extensive NFL college football analysis. He is the guy to follow as we get ready for the NFL draft just a couple weeks away. He is Emory Hunt, and as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Emory, great stuff today. I appreciate you jumping on.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me on.